I promise you guys that this review won't be as controversial as the last one. And if you guys don't know what I'm talking about, good. Let's keep it that way. Now, if you excuse me, I just gotta cue the review!
Frankenweenie. For those of you who don't know, Tim Burton remade this movie from his 1984 30-minute live-action short of the same name. It's pretty much a Frankenstein parody about a boy who wants his dog back after it died from an accident. It's simple and not the most action-packed short, yet what makes it good is that it has heart, because you do feel for the relationship between the kid and the dog. Fast forward 28 years later, Tim is back to his stop-motion ways and reanimated his old project back to life. But now that Frankenweenie has risen from its grave, will it struck us like Tim's last stop-motion films? Or will we have to go put it back under its tombstone? Let's find out. The story. You'd think that they would just retell the original short, but 3 times longer. Well, kinda, but they mostly do that for the first half of the movie, and unfortunately, they didn't do it as well as before. They made the plot into a lazier version of something like E.T. or The Iron Giant, where Victor has to hide Sparky, the supernatural creature of the movie, from the public, even his parents. It doesn't really help either that the main characters weren't as developed as they were in the short, which means that they failed to capture that heart it had with the relationship between Victor and Sparky. But does this mean that the story is uninteresting? Not really, no. You see, the main star of the movie is not really Victor or Sparky, but the ideology of bringing animals back to life Frankenstein style. The moment the movie would get interesting is when Victor would try to bring Sparky back to life, and when the other kids start to get interested in doing the same thing. The premise of that is what saves the movie, and it does plenty of creative things with it, especially during the third act. If they took that out and would just stick with the main plot, the film would have been pretty dull. The story may not have captured the spirit of the original short, but it does work in a different way. The animation. You'd think that the animation looks appealing because of the classic stop-motion Tim Burton style, but you'd be surprised that there's actually much more to it than that. I will confess, I do find that the Tim Burton design in a stop-motion film is starting to get pretty old, but don't get me wrong, the character animation is still good and can get very unique at times. Now, what I like about its animation is that they made the entire film a tribute to the classic horror films of the past, from the classic Universal films of the 30s to about the monster flicks of the 80s. Not only because of the obvious fact that it's all in black and white, but also several characters were actually designed after famous horror movie stars, including Vincent Price and Boris Karloff. But where the animation shines is in the third act, where it turns into a monster mash. When the kids other than Victor try to do their own Frankenanimal, not only are they very imaginative by design and how they move, but also how they are little homages as well, like to the Wolfman, Godzilla, and the Gremlins. The same can be said with Sparky. It's nice how they play with the Frankendog concept, rather it be his detachable parts, or when he drinks water. It's nice to see some good animation, but when it also pays tribute to a classic genre, it just helps make the movie more fun to see. The characters. As I mentioned before, the characters that were in the original short have pretty much been downgraded. First, we have Victor, a young boy who likes science and make homemade horror films, but like most Tim Burton films, he's an outcast and doesn't have many friends except for Sparky. Unfortunately, being an outcast is the only quality that Victor has, and he's just forgettable and one-dimensional because of it. The same can be said about his parents. Like in Paranorman, the parents are reduced to a down-to-earth dad and a naive, caring mom. The rest of the characters, on the other hand, are more in the opposite spectrum of the Frankenstein family. They're all weird, but likably whimsical in a way that only Tim Burton can pull off. The kids like Edgar, Bob, Toshiaki, Nassor, and that freaky giant-eyed girl are the most memorable ones, not only because of their freaky personalities, but because we all want to see how they would approach on how to revive a dead animal. There are some though, like Mr. Rekruski and Mr. Burgermeister, who would have the same likability as the kids, but I feel like they weren't used as much as they should, like they should have more screen time or should connect to the plot more. The only new character that's not really interesting is Elsa. You'd think that she would be the love interest of the movie, but she barely makes an appearance nor have any relevance to the plot. Even if the characters we should care the most are forgettably generic, at least they balanced it out with a colorful cast of side characters. Frankenweenie may not have been Tim Burton's best animated work, but it's still fun to watch with a premise of reviving animals back from the grave that saved a dull story, nice animation that acts as an homage to the old monster movies, and likably weird characters, except for the important ones. If you guys are a fan of the classic Universal horror films or major Tim Burton fans, then this is a must-see for you guys. For the rest, like Paranorman, this is a good movie to watch to get you in the mood for Halloween. You know what I'd love to see Tim Burton do if he does another animated film? Use a different technique than stop motion like hand-drawn animation. Like I said before, Tim's stop motion is getting old now and I want to see how Tim's design would work in other techniques of animation. Who knows, we can probably amp up the creepiness in the animation by having a motion capture Tim Burton movie.